I'm Eric Anderson. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, it may be the strongest El Nino event in 20 years. The weather pattern that may help quench the drought in San Diego.
Getting from community college into a UC school just got a little easier, at least for some majors. We'll explain how it works. I'm Peggy Pico. Also ahead, at nearly $19 billion a year, exports from San Diego reach an all-time high. What it means for our economy and local jobs.
Nobody's actually helping us out, so we go out. That's why we go out and work, to keep the place running.
Forced to fend for themselves, the fallout from a Tijuana program for recovering addicts, the disturbing trend that has raised the concern of human rights groups. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Dwane Brown is off. San Diego's immigrant rights groups are calling delays on President Barack Obama's deferred action programs a waiting game. They met in San Diego today to listen to arguments on his executive orders before the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Known as DACA and DAPA, they're on temporary hold due to a 26-state lawsuit. These programs would shield nearly 5 million immigrants from deportation nationwide. About 100,000 of them are in San Diego. The final decision could take months. 4 months ago, Tijuana's mayor put hundreds of homeless migrants into drug rehabilitation centers. It was an unprecedented move that raised human rights concerns. KPBS Fronteras reporter Jean Guerrero explains why the relocation hasn't gone exactly as planned.
Mariana Soto had been searching for her mentally ill son, Misael, for almost 2 months when KPBS first visited her Tijuana home. She'd looked in jails, migrant shelters, and even the morgue, suspecting he was dead. Soto says a neighbor saw the police pick Misael up off the street the day he disappeared. It wouldn't have been the first time.
Because he was talking to himself. They thought he was drugged, but he just talked to himself. Sometimes he would stand outside talking, and I said, "Come in, or the police will get you." And he said, "I'm not the one talking. They're talking to me. I'm just responding."
35-year-old Misael Garcia Soto had been suffering from auditory hallucinations and delusions.
This is the neurologist's prescription.
The prescription was for a diagnostic MRI, but Soto couldn't pay for it. The day Misael disappeared, Tijuana Mayor Jorge Astiazaran was in the process of evacuating El Bordo, a homeless encampment along the Tijuana River Canal. Migrants deported from the U.S. used to take shelter there. Hundreds were shipped to drug rehabilitation centers, some against their will.
Generally, any drug user will reject help. They'll never accept they need help.
We spoke to Maria del Rosario Lozada back when El Bordo was first evacuated. The government hasn't responded to our request for an interview on this story. Lozada is overseeing the rehabilitation program, and Soto went to her with Misael's picture in case he'd been mistaken for a homeless migrant. Soto says Lozada told her she'd seen Misael at a rehab center and gave her an address.
But it was empty. There were no patients.
So Soto contacted Lozada again. And got another address. But her son wasn't there either.
When I realized he wasn't there, I thought these are all lies.
Soto went to see Lozada one more time. She got a third address. This time, it was the right one. After nearly 2 months of searching, Soto found her son.
I was painting a house, and then when I was going to my home, the cops bring me here. I don't know they think that I was a drug addict, and they bring me here for no reason. I was walking to my house.
The rehab center DAR houses 61 recovering addicts. 14 were dropped off from El Bordo. The center has weekly meetings for recovering addicts to discuss their feelings, but it doesn't have any psychologists to treat delusions like Misael's.
Tengo naves espaciales.
I have spacecrafts, 2 in Iran and 1 in China.
Tengo dos en Irán y una en China.
When people first arrive at the center, they're kept in a small room behind a padlocked door. Manager Manuel Romero says some are bruised and wounded because life is tough on the street. The center has several security guards.
So we have somebody, just keeping watch, making sure everybody behaves.
Romero says the city government promised the center money for taking in the homeless migrants, but officials have yet to deliver. So Dar sends recovering addicts out to work to pay for food and other essentials.
Nobody's actually helping us out, so we go out. That's why we go out and work, to keep the place running.
Centers like Dar have gotten criticism from Mexican human rights groups. Mexican law says drug rehabilitation must be strictly voluntary.
These centers deprive people of their freedom under the banner of medical treatment.
Darinka Carballo is a Mexican lawyer and director of the nonprofit Fundación Gaia, which has offered healthcare, food, and other services to El Bordo migrants since 2013. She says rehab wasn't the right answer for all of them.
Not everyone who lived in El Bordo used drugs.
Carballo says she asked the government for information on how they decided which migrants belonged in rehab.
I don't have any documentary evidence that people were diagnosed, that they have a file or any competent medical doctor or psychiatrist following up with them.
Carballo says she hasn't been able to find all of the migrants her foundation worked with in the canal.
Now the question is, where are they? Are they really okay?
Some say they never made it to rehab. Mario Lopez says he lived in El Bordo until police put him and some friends into a van.
He went and dropped us off in the middle of nowhere.
The middle of nowhere was an empty lot in the agricultural valley of San Quintin, about 200 miles south of Tijuana. There was a shortage of laborers there because of a strike. Lopez says he found work and paid for a ride back to Tijuana, but he's worried about what happened to his friends.
A lot of these guys, they were looking real bad,
Back at Dar, Soto says she has no hard feelings against the city for taking her son. The center looks pretty nice in her view. She decided to leave Misael there while saving money for a neurologist. She sees him on weekends.
He's safe here, not in the street.
She's afraid that if she brings him home, the police might take him again. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
For more about the rehabilitation of the migrants and how it relates to the U.S., visit kpbs.org. Fronteras reporting is made possible in part by a grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. There was a big drug seizure at the border by the Otay Mesa border crossing. More than 1,500 pounds of marijuana were hidden in a shipment of tea leaves. The drugs were found by a dog Wednesday night. Officials say there were more than 1,000 packages of marijuana in that truck. The drugs have an estimated street value of $900,000. There is no word on any arrests. A new federal weather forecast shows the closely watched El Nino condition is intensifying. The warming of the Pacific Ocean may last through next spring. KPBS reporter Susan Murphy tells us that a strong event has the potential to trigger soaking winter storms here in San Diego.
The strongest El Nino event in nearly 20 years seems to be developing in the tropical Pacific Ocean. The forecast could be good news for San Diego, which has seen 4 consecutive winters of below-average rainfall. Climate researcher Dave Pierce with Scripps Institution of Oceanography says water temperatures in the equatorial Pacific have reached 4 degrees above average, and emerging trade winds are shifting the path of the jet stream.
And to try to put that into context, the largest recent El Nino we've had was in 1997-98. That event, it was warmer in mid-July than it is at the moment. So it's not as big as the 97-98 event, but it's bigger than any we've had since then.
Pierce says ocean water temperatures in July of 1997 reached 6 degrees above average. The event was credited with dumping 17 inches of rain at Lindbergh Field. He says this El Nino has the potential to continue to grow stronger, or it could diminish a bit. Strong El Nino events have historically correlated with above-average rainfall in San Diego of 20% or more, though Pierce warns there's no guarantee. Susan Murphy, KPBS News.
San Diego's VA healthcare system celebrated female veterans today with a special event at its clinic in Oceanside. VA officials are trying to encourage more women to take advantage of veterans' benefits. KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg joins us from the North County Bureau. Kenny, how many female veterans are there in San Diego?
There's about 28,000 female veterans in San Diego and Imperial counties, but VA officials say less than half of them are registered for VA medical benefits, so there's clearly a long way to go.
So what are some of the health issues that are unique to female vets?
One issue that's emerged in recent years is the high percentage of female veterans who suffered either sexual harassment or sexual assault in the military. And Jennifer Roberts, who's the Women Veterans Program Manager in San Diego, says about 1 in 5 female vets suffered some sort of sexual trauma in the military.
So it's about 20%, and those are just the females that are willing to admit it from the get-go. A lot of patients will screen positive at their second appointment and when they feel more comfortable with their provider.
What services are available for women who've suffered sexual trauma in the military?
The VA offers individual and group counseling. It also offers support groups for women who've suffered sexual trauma. In addition to that, the VA offers a whole wide array of women's health services, and there's even 3 designated women's care clinics in San Diego. And as Navy veteran Maria Kosick tells me, it's not your grandfather's VA.
It's getting better. It's getting more geared to females. And just come on in. They're not snubbing you or putting you last like was happening years ago. 20 years ago, we were last. Now we're just as important as the men. And that's really nice. And it makes you feel better.
We know how many female vets there are locally. How about nationwide?
There's about 2 million female veterans nationwide. They make up about 9% of the total veteran population.
KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg. Kenny, thanks.
Thank you.
Mammoth bones, prehistoric rock carvings, and more than 1 million acres of wilderness are going to be protected in 3 new national monuments. President Barack Obama set aside more than 330,000 acres for a monument at the Berryessa Snow Mountain in Northern California. The other monuments established today are in Texas and Nevada. Community college students may have an easier time transferring into UC campuses. We first told you about the plan that offers them a clear path earlier. Peggy Pico takes a closer look at how it's going to work.
Until now, each of the 9 University of California campuses had its own entrance requirements for transferring college students. The process made it difficult for students applying to multiple UC campuses. Now, the new program, Transfer Pathways, aims to make it easier. Here with how are my guests, Stephen Handel, Associate Vice President of Undergraduate Admissions for the University of California System, and Lynn Nolt, Vice Chancellor of Student Services at San Diego Community College District. And Stephen, what is the goal of this transfer pathway?
Well, part of it is to build a much stronger relationship with California's community colleges. We have 9 undergraduate campuses, and each of our campuses is very interested in enrolling community college transfer students. And we need to make that process a little bit simpler. So what the faculty have done, have gotten together for among the most popular majors and simplified that process for students, telling them precisely the kinds of courses they need to take.
And how many transfer students do you typically get?
Well, we take 1 transfer student for every 2 freshmen, so about 1/3 of our enrollment is of California community college students.
And you mentioned there were 10 majors that it's going to apply to right away. Can you highlight a few of those?
Sure. They're among the most popular majors that our community college transfers are interested in. So biology, chemistry, physics, mathematics, economics, psychology, sociology.
That's good to know. Those are popular. Now, Lynn, how many community college students do you have that say, I'm interested in going into UC school?
Well, we have about 50% of our students that come to us when they apply indicate an interest to transfer. At that time, they don't specify which university or campus, but they do declare a transfer intent. And we know that UCSD has consistently been our second top transfer destination for our students year after year over the past several years, as well as we transfer students to other campuses all over the state.
So specifically, how would this streamline process make it easier for community colleges students to apply to the UC system?
Well, as we know, it's the capacity at the public universities in California is a challenge for many of our students. There just simply isn't enough space to meet all of the demand. So students have to really allow themselves to apply to many institutions and have a number of options because it's getting more and more competitive. So this will allow our students to really prepare to transfer to any of the institutions and have more options.
And kind of know, I guess, which classes
Absolutely.
they need to take and on a timeline.
Precisely the idea is to make community college transfer students competitive across our system. And so by systemizing these requirements, they then have more options to avail themselves. It's a very competitive process, and so we want to have them have as many options as possible.
Sure. And Steve, how much is this going to cost and how is it funded?
It's not going to, frankly, cost anything because what we're providing here is the kind of guidance that students very much want to get. And so that's why our faculty got together, understanding that we asked them to apply to multiple campuses, so it's the obligation's on us to sort of provide the guidance that's necessary to get them to enroll.
I understand it was part of that budget deal negotiated with the governor in a budget increase for education. Will the university system actually fund this with, or actually increase staff to help with this?
Well, one part, you're right, one part of the budget framework is for the university to move more closely to the 2-to-1 ratio as part of the California Master Plan, which involves increases in enrollment.
2-to-1, tell us what that is.
Well, the 2-to-1 ratio basically means, again, for all of our campuses, taking at least one transfer student for every 2 freshmen that we take. Many of our campuses are already there. A couple of campuses need to work up to that. So that's part of the budget framework.
And Lynn, how does streamlining this transfer process actually help community colleges?
Well, what this does for our students is it gives them a clear roadmap, if you will. So with the number of students that we serve, often they're not able to get in to see a counselor to help map out their pathway. And when sometimes preparing for transfer can be pretty daunting for students because if you want to go to this institution, here are the courses you need to take. If you want to go to this institution, here are the courses you need to take. So you don't know where you're going to get accepted and you need to prepare. This will really allow our students to have a clear roadmap to say, okay, here's your roadmap to UCSD in biology, or UC Berkeley, or UC Merced. So it really gives a clear guidance for our students.
Pathway, as it says, and I'll have to end on this, Stephen. So when does this start? When can students start participating?
Well, as you know, President Napolitano, along with Chancellor Bryce Harris, announced this just last week. It begins now, essentially. It's guidance that will be available for students now. So students beginning this fall, the community colleges will have that advice and counsel going forward. So we hope for them to take advantage of it as soon as possible.
All right, Stephen Handel and Lynn Noel, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
J.J. Abrams helped bring the force of Star Wars to San Diego's ComicCon convention today. Of course, the director of the upcoming Star Wars film, The Force Awakens, took part in a highly anticipated panel discussion. Star Wars fans waiting in long lines for that panel. There were also plenty of Imperial stormtroopers on hand.
Being able to see the smile on a kid's face when you walk in the room, you're there for them. You give them special attention. It's I don't do it for selfish reasons, but it makes me feel very good being able to help someone else and brighten their day.
The new Star Wars movie is due out in theaters in December. Devoted fans are willing to wait in line for hours, sometimes even days, for their favorite stars at Comic-Con. KPBS reporter Matt Bowler has more on a new app that may help offer them some relief.
Inside the halls or on the streets during Comic-Con, superheroes and their fans are everywhere. Sci-fi or comic book hero sidekick or fan, there's something for the kid in all of us. But why are we so fascinated with heroes? I met up with Travis Langley, a real superheroologist. He's a psychology professor at Henderson State University in Arkansas. Langley literally wrote the book on why we love superheroes. Langley says heroes and villains are a great way for us to explore the good and evil in us all.
People at Comic-Con are celebrating interest that might even ostracize them somewhere else.
So you have your favorite superhero and villain, and both of them have separate panels at Comic-Con. What do you do? How do you get a good spot for both of them? Jeanette Nguyen has the solution. She helped create a new app called Line Angel. With her app, you can hire someone to wait in line for you. Nguyen says there's no reason you should miss out on your favorite hero because you're at an event for your favorite villain.
Now that there's an option for me, I'm so much happier, and I know that I won't miss out and I can take part.
Hero or villain, Star Trek or Star Wars. Not only is being a fan good for you, it just got a whole lot easier. From ComicCon, Matt Bowler, KPBS News.
The value of San Diego County business exports reached a record high of $18.6 billion last year. Peggy Pico finds out what's being shipped and its impact on the local economy.
Exports from San Diego County increased by $700 million, or nearly 4% from the year before, reaching a record high of nearly $19 billion in 2014, says the U.S. Commerce Department's latest report. Here with the details is my guest, Mark Cafferty, CEO for San Diego Regional Economic Development Corporation. And Mark, what are some of the major export industries here in San Diego?
It's interesting. We have a very diverse array of export industries in San Diego, but what's leading that a lot are some of the industries that you would probably think of when you think of the technology sectors in San Diego. So the movement of goods related to computer and electronic manufacturing. An awful lot of that is attributed to pharmaceuticals or biotechnology or med device related products as well.
And how about the military? Are they an exporter?
It's fascinating. So the military is a huge part of our economy, and what a lot of people don't recognize is while some of the bigger defense contractors that we think of, Northrop Grumman, Cubic, and General Atomics, people think of them only doing work in the U.S. because they do so much around defense. But an awful lot of those global partnerships right now are allowing us to actually have products that are created here, as large as drones and unmanned systems, exported and shipped to other parts of the world.
Well, that leads me to the next question then. What specifically, can you give us examples of what are we shipping? Are we shipping electronics?
It really is everything. San Diego does have one of the most diverse innovation economies and one of the most diverse economies in the world, and it could be as big as the turbines that are being shipped by Solar Turbines. It could be as small as components that are going into medical devices and other manufacturing that are actually happening, that are taking products around the world and really kind of bringing them to another level with technology that's being shipped from San Diego.
So who's buying? I mean, where are these products going?
That's what's interesting is we know that we still have a lot more room to improve. So San Diego is an economy that has been almost in a way hyper-local. So we're starting to see some great trade opportunities with Europe, London and England leading the way on that. Canada and Mexico are incredible trade partners, but Asia and South America is really where we're looking a lot right now. So Japan, China, and many of the South American economies.
Reaching nearly $19 billion in exports, that's a lot of money.
Absolutely.
What does it mean for our local economy?
That's the one thing that sometimes folks don't put back together is the more internationally connected our economy gets, the more opportunities for us to grow products here and ship them overseas. It actually means more local jobs. People are producing more here. There is more opportunity to connect with those international markets, which might mean that investment flows back this way. So what we look at and what we focus on is places where we know we can grow local jobs, and we know that an awful lot of that right now is connected to international markets.
What do you think is behind this growth?
A lot of things. I would love to say that we could take a lot of credit here at the local level, but I think you probably have 5 components. One is a strengthening economy here in the U.S. There's just no doubt about that. But the federal administration has focused for the past few years on exports as a strategy. The governor's office in California has focused on growing exports and international connectedness. And locally, we've had more than 40 partners come together to create an export plan. So I think if you factor those things in, that's why we've seen the needle move, and we want to continue to see it do that in the years ahead.
How does San Diego compare to the rest of the state and the nation when it comes to exports? Where do we rank?
It's interesting. We rank high compared to an awful lot of regions around the country. We would like to rank higher within the metros within the state of California and those other areas that we compete with. So in some ways, the typical story in California, San Diego is always struggling in a way to keep up with LA and the Silicon Valley Bay Area. But we think that California is increasing exports pretty heavily right now, and we think San Diego is going to gain a great deal from that.
Well, one of the issues might be we have a much smaller port, a shipping port, than LA. Does that weigh into it at all?
It may, but I think the interesting thing that folks don't realize is that our port leadership has thought very heavily on what are the niche opportunities for our port. And they're part of that group that I talked about where 40 organizations have come together and said, how do we use our airport? How do we use our rail structure? How do we use the port and our partner ports, both in Ensenada and up in LA and Long Beach?
Well, I know President Obama is pushing the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or the trade agreement between the U.S. and 15 other countries. Is that helping to shape what we're doing here?
That will help to shape what we're doing an awful lot. So I think if you look at the statistics that came out, an awful lot of the stronger export growth has been with nations where we have trade agreements already. We're firm believers that in opening that Trans-Pacific Partnership, an awful lot of the countries and the regions that we want to target are the ones that are really kind of focused on in that particular legislation.
All right, Mark Cafferty, thank you so much.
Wonderful for having me here. Thank you.
It was a hero's welcome today in Manhattan for the World Cup champions. Very exciting stuff. New York has had plenty of ticker tape parades, but this is the first time that they've honored a women's sports team. Now, mobs of young girls and fans lined the parade route, cheering for all 23 players from the U.S. women's soccer team. They defeated Japan on Sunday, bringing home the team's first World Cup since 1999. A mild, dry weekend in store for San Diego. Look for temperatures in the 70s out by the beaches. It's going to be cloudy inland with temperatures in the 70s and 80s. Sunny up in the mountains, temperatures in the 70s and 80s. And then out in the desert, tank top weather, triple digits expected, of course, this time of year. You can find tonight's stories on our website. It's kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll be back here again on Monday. Have a great weekend.